Hello, and thank you for watching the ISSC's video on understanding the I-983, covering common mistakes made in the document. In this video, we'll be covering topics such as what is STEM OPT, understanding the I-983, student versus employer responsibilities, common errors made by students or employers while filling out the form, as well as common questions asked to our office about this document. So starting off, STEM OPT is a 2-year extension of the OPT, optional practical training, that can be applied for after graduating from your degree program as an F1 student. In order to apply for STEM OPT with USCIS, all F1 students need to get an I-20 with special STEM OPT remarks on it from the ISSC by filling out the STEM OPT I-20 request e-form, which is found in the My ISSC e-form portal under F1 Practical Training. One of the documents required for this e-form is the I-93, which is a 5-page document filled out by the student and their employer, which will lay out the formal training plan the student will receive during the 2-year period. So the I-93, it is a DHS Department of Homeland Security document, so it's imperative that you and your employer fill this out correctly, accurately, and truthfully. This document is broken up into 7 sections, which are labeled as either student or employer based off of which party is responsible for filling out that section of the document. DHS requires that the STEM OPT student and their employment work together to fill out this document. Properly completing this form together will successfully document the relationship between the STEM OPT opportunity, the academic degree received, and the learning objectives of the F1 student. So if you go to the Department of Homeland Security website and you download a blank copy of the I-983, this is what it should look like if you find the correct document. This is what page 1 of the document shows. And throughout this presentation, I'll be showing you an example of what a correctly filled out I-983 is, using my own information as an example, as well as highlighting what are the common areas that students make mistakes on it. So let's talk about student versus employee responsibilities. Students are responsible for filling out sections 1, 2, the top part of student or of section 5, while the employer is responsible for sections 3, 4, the rest of section 5, as well as section 6 of the document. The student sections are mainly biological or biographical information, as well as information related to your F1 record and your degree of study, while the employer sections cover information about the company and the training plan you'll be receiving on STEM OPT from the company. The employer that signs the Form I-93 must be the same entity that provides the practical training the student receives. The employer may not be the F1 student's employer in name only and may not assign or otherwise delegate its training responsibilities to a non-employer third party, for example, one of its clients or the customer of the company. F1 students may not be self-employed and fill out this document on their own or work for another F1 visa holder while on STEM OPT. This would not satisfy the bona fide employer-employee relationship of the I-93 training plan, which is a requirement by USCIS. In this presentation, we're not going to be covering a step-by-step guide for how to fill this out necessarily, but all the information of how to access the required information for how to fill out the form can be found using our Canvas course, which is located on the STEM OPT webpage of the ISSC's website. I strongly urge all students use this tool, as it's the best thing our office has to provide for students to fill out the I-983 correctly and to help prevent requests for actions from our office, which is going to delay your processing time and you getting you that I-20 you need to apply. Okay, so let's start talking about common errors in the document. In section 1, which is covering student info, the name of the school recommending STEM OPT as well as where the degree was earned, it should always say Arizona State University. Do not put your individual college within ASU, such as WP Carey or Fulton School of Engineering. These are not valid answers to that question, as while yes, you studied under them, they are not the specific school awarding you your degree. It's ASU. For DSO contact info, Please use the name of the DSO on the most recent I-20 you have received and put in the email address and phone number of the ISSC. Do not put the individual email or phone number of an ISSC DSO. You want to put in the contact info as our office, not the specific DSO. For the SIP code as well as the qualifying major in that section, you need to put the name of the degree as well as the SIP code associated with it to be valid. If it's just one or the other, you'll get a request for action requesting you to fix your document. Based on prior degree should always be checked no. If your STEM OPT participation is based off of your most recently obtained degree, and that is the degree upon which your current OPT is based off of. Now, this may sound misleading because you may think, well, my prior degree that I received is my most recent one. But in this case, what it's asking, or where you would say yes in this scenario, is if, let's say, for example, you did your undergraduate with a STEM degree and did not use your STEM OPT, and then you went on and did a master's in a non-STEM degree, but you still wanted to use the STEM OPT opportunity from your undergraduate degree that was unused. That's when you would check yes in that scenario. But that's a very rare scenario and does not apply to most students. So otherwise, always check no in the I-93 for your option. Okay, so as I mentioned before, here is page one filled out correctly. So as you can see, the name of the school recommending STEM OPT is Arizona State University, and it's also where the degree was earned. Under the DSO contact info is the name of one of the DSOs, as well as the email for the ISSC's employment team, as well as the office phone number. For the STEM OPT requested period, it should always be the start date should be from the day after your post OPT ends to the day before that date, 2 years in the future. So in this scenario, the 7th of January, 2025 to January 6th, 2027 would be the valid STEM dates. As you can see on here, the qualifying major and the SIP code are both included, so this would be valid and accepted by our office. Based off of prior degree is marked no. And then on your EAD card, you're required to put the 9-digit number that is found on that card into your I-983. Make sure that it's only the 9-digit number that you're putting down. Oftentimes, students will put down your receipt number that's found on the card, which is a number starting with IOE. Do not put the IOE number. You want to put the 9-digit number found above your name. Next to the common errors, we're going to be grouping sections 2, 4, and 6, which is student certification, employer certification, and employer official certification, all into one section because they all have the same error found on them, which has to do with the signatures on the document. USCIS accepts either wet ink or handwritten signatures or electronic signatures on the Form I-93. A digitally reproduced copy may be a scanned image of a physical signature or a software such as DocuSign. Typed signatures are not a valid signature and will result in your e-form being sent into follow-up status until a proper signature is produced. So for example, here's examples of what acceptable signatures look like. So as you can see, wet ink signature written with a blue pen, that is accepted. A DocuSign signature, which is through a software such as Adobe DocuSign, this would be accepted because although this is a typed name um, in the picture, it does have that verifiable code associated with it that we can verify to check that yes, this was John Doe who signed that part of the document. And then in an electronic reproduction of the signature, as you can see down here, this is a digital version of a wet ink signature that is just a like a photocopy that is copy and pasted into the document. That is an acceptable signature. So here's an example of section 2 that's filled out correctly. If you were the one filling it out. So as you can see, it's asking for the printed name of the student as well as the signature of the student. So in my example, it is a wet ink signature that I use to sign the document. Now for section 3, employer information. So this is going to be the first section completed by the employer. but often one where we issue the most requests for actions over, and that has to do because of the start date of employment. So the start date of employment will reflect what day you begin working with that employer while on STEM OPT, not when you first start working there overall. So for example, if your STEM OPT begins June 10th, then your start date of employment in the document will be also listed as June 10th, even if you were working there prior to that date on post OPT. On the e-form itself, that may seem misleading, but again, this document is asking when are you first working with the company on STEM OPT? So that's why you're putting your start date of STEM OPT. In addition, employers will sometimes forget to fill out the EIN number, but we need that number in order to update your SEVIS record and register them as your employer. So it's important that you make sure that is filled out in the document correctly. Now, here's the properly filled out version of section 3. So as you can see, I highlighted the two sections you'll find those errors in. So start date of employment, if you refer back to section 1, the start date is matching what I had in there as my start date of employment, so January 7th, 2025. And the EIN number is listed here, but again, it's blocked out because this is a hypothetical example scenario, not ASU's actual EIN number. Now, next for section 5, which is the actual training plan you'll be receiving. There are several errors we often see in this section. So employer site info, this section should reflect where the student is working on STEM OPT, if it is a specific branch of the company and is different than the headquarters of the company. If you're working remote, please designate that you're working remote in that site name, and put your home address in the site address. But in the SCV portal, we're still going to be putting in the address of the office that you're working through, not your home address for that section. In the training plan, the I-93 must have all four parts of the training plan in section 5 filled out, which is covering the student's role, goals and objectives, employer oversight, and how your work is being measured and assessed by the employer. If any of those sections are missing or not filled out, your e-form is going to be put back into follow-up. Additionally, employer email and phone number must be included um, in the I-93 as that's needed in the SCV portal for us to update your record. So again, here's the example of section 5, which is showing the training plan. Um, Again, it's showing the site name. So in this hypothetical scenario, I put down the ISSC's office, which is located in the Student Services Building at 1151 South Forest Avenue. And then I have the email and the phone number of my supervisor. And um, you can only see the student role in this section, not the rest of the Sections 5's training plan. But there's something there written there as part of showing what the role is in theory. Now, finally, for page 5 of the document, you want to leave this section completely blank at this time if you're first applying for STEM OPT. So you want no signatures on that page, no names on it, no signatures, date, or anything. The reason for this is because the top half of the document is going to be used during the 12-month STEM OPT reporting, while the bottom half is going to be used during the 24-month STEM OPT reporting, or when you depart that employer. Similar to the sections 2, 4, and 6, um, all signatures must be either a wet ink signature or a digital reproduction of a wet ink signature or DocuSign in order to be considered valid. So here's an example of the final evaluation. So in this scenario, I'm leaving the company after working there for about 10 months. So in this section, the student would write, what they worked on with the company as it relates to their training plan during that time, successful projects or accomplishments they had, contributions to the company, and then it's going to be signed by both the student as well as their supervisor. Um, Both those signatures are going to be needed by our office in order to accept the filing evaluation and update your SEVIS record. Now let's cover some common questions asked by students to our office about the I-983. What do I do if I'm being transferred to another office location? Do I need to update the I-983? Yes. You will need to submit the employment update e-form letting us know that you're with the same employer, but the address is different. The I-93 should also reflect that company address change, as we need to go into your SCV portal, update the address in there, and then issue you a new I-20 based off of that new address location where you'll be working. For question two, I'm getting paid from Amazon, but I'm receiving training from a different company. How do I fill out my I-983? So, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the company that you're getting paid from has to be the same one that's providing the training for you. So, in this scenario, this would not be allowed because, in theory, you're receiving that training from a third-party company, not Amazon. So, this would not be an eligible form of employment on STEM OPT. And for the last question, it has been X amount of days since I submitted my e-form. Why do I still not have my I-9 or my I-20 yet? So there can be a lot of factors that cause a long processing time with the ISSC, but in general, it takes around 7 business days for office to process the request for an I-20 as well as all e-forms. Doing things such as getting a request for action or canceling the e-form instead of responding to the request for action can both lead to longer processing times. Particularly if you cancel the e-form, that's going to cause a lot of issues with your e-form because it's going to get stuck in the wrong stage and it's going to get lost if you resubmit the e-form again with the corrections requested. So please do not ever cancel the e-form unless you're explicitly told to. Only send the request for action through the designated request for action e-form. Otherwise, your e-form is going to get lost and it can take a week or 2 weeks before you actually get your I-20, which for a lot of students who are under a time crunch with applying for STEM OPT can make or break their chances of getting STEM. Thank you so much for listening to our video. If you have any further questions about the I-983, feel free to call our office or drop into an advising session or consult our website for our webpage on the STEM OPT as well as the I-983. Thank you.